So I guess I'll talk about this work here because it's here. Do you want that to stop?
No, I'm just curious what's in it.
Oh yeah. Although it's like I have a number of projects going, and all of which would be relevant. But anyway, I'll talk about this, and then if you want to ask me what other things you can. So this is part, and I know I've talked to various people, so I apologize for repeating, but this is part of a long-term body of work working with the Hudson Bay Point Blankets that I started probably in, I guess, 2008. And I'm working with the blankets as a colonial currency, and with all their various histories around trade and interaction and therefore relationship, and around history as a tool of biological warfare, which I know is a contentious assertion. However, along with the kind of documents from the US that track the intentional use of blankets in that way, I've read oral histories from Canada that talk about how the blankets were brought into the community and handled, and what transpired, and how that illustrates that there was intention. So, yeah. So there's, I feel like the blankets hold a resonance from a number of different perspectives, and from the intersection of settler and Aboriginal people, and so that's sort of where I come to it. And also I look at them in the contemporary consumer culture and how they're really have become this national icon, and increasingly are used as the brand image of the Bay, particularly since it was bought by a US concern, and how that's really cleansed and disappeared a lot of the history. And so to me that's really an echo of the kind of larger and mainstream Canadian mythologies and identities that have also rendered invisible the realities of our histories and complicities and stuff like that. So that's where I come to using the blanket. And I'm actually coming to the end of using the blanket, but so this is probably the last chunk of long-term work. So these works are made with a Jacquard computer loom, and that is a kind of a human mechanical digital hybrid, and the ones that I use are run through the body, as well as a digital and mechanical intersection. And I was originally interested in working with the loom as a way of translating, making a translation of the blanket and a remaking of the blanket, like thinking of what I had been doing with the blankets in various ways is taking them apart materially and digitally and reconfiguring them in ways to kind of think through more anti-colonial counter-narratives, and thinking through the realities of complicity and privilege and stuff like that. So trying to make some of that picture visible. But I wanted to work performatively with the loom, and I went to learn how to use it because you have to code the images. My understanding of it was that it translated photographic images. So when I went to got funding to do the workshops and found that actually you translate the images into code, and then the coding performs this translation. So it's a very labor-intensive translation process. And a lot of my work is very engaged with the labor of the body. And although a lot of it is, material object or digital image or, animation, the making and the labor of the body is a really important and primary component to me. Anyway, so I wanted to do a performative piece, a durational performance, where I wove some component of this image, which I'll talk about in a minute, and somehow incorporated real-time text, so tweets or an online conversation into the weaving. Anyway, so I went and I found out, how the process worked, and felt that I had to do a number of pieces, to kind of back up and work through a number of pieces, both to determine sort of the nuances of what could be done in terms of image and formally, and also to understand how it might work performatively. So these are the first set of pieces that have come out of that. There's 3 or 4 other ones that either have not been woven or are not here. And they're working with historical and contemporary sizes of the blankets. There's certain points that I've taken the sizes from, and then also historical and contemporary colors of the bars. So for instance, this one is, and I should say too before I go on that the other image is the image of points, which is the denominational kind of system of value of the blankets. So each blanket would have like 3 to 8. Is everybody familiar with that?
Yeah.
Points? No. So I had created an image around the apology that is a 35-foot digital print with this, if we look at the upper image, so a real size image of hundreds of points in that configuration. So it would be more like 8 inches. And I was thinking around systems of value and constructed systems of value and the value of that utterance and text and textile, etc. So I want to incorporate that also, that thought process into this work. So that's the other image that you see, and in order to translate it, it has to be scaled. So each, there's a translation from the textile to the digital print, and then back into the textile. And it's, I see it as a remaking of the blanket in a way that's, again, thinking through these ideas. So this one I was going to say is I wanted to bring some contemporary, like the color, the bars and the colors of the blankets were a lot kind of went through design sort of phases in different times. Pink and blue were brought in the 50s and for kids' beds. And these colors are understood as the colors that related to Queen Anne at that time. And this one is from the 2010 Olympics. And, at that time the blanket was made, and of course it's marketed internationally, and this is, telling the Canadian story, right, through this object that's now cleansed of any difficult history. So, and that blanket was called Sea to Sky, which, of course, if people who know Vancouver know that that's the name of the highway from Vancouver to Whistler, so they're implicating the land and how controversial that the interruptions to the land were to make that Olympics happen, and so this one they're not all titled, but this one's sea to sea to sea to sky. So I'm thinking of this whole land base. Yeah, and I won't go into detail about all of them, but really like having, when I work on them at this loom, which is located in Montreal, and I finished them and had to leave immediately, so I didn't have really a chance to put them up or finish them off, and start to think about how I was going to move forward with them. So that's one of the things that I'm doing here. And I can talk about, I have some ideas. I've talked to a few of you just in passing about what sort of extensions of this project that I'm interested in doing. But, and I should say too that the sizes are, when the blankets were made, they're made on a huge roll. They were always made in England, and then they still are. And then they were cut into pairs to be shipped. And so until the 70s, they would cut them at the store. So you'd buy them, and they would be cut. And some you can find them occasionally pairs that have not been cut. So I was interested in this kind of reflection and that too. The idea of a set that has not been divided.
So those strands are at the points? Is that the
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And is there a reason that they have different looks to them? Like some look very tight and some look more.
It's just the weave structure.
Okay.
Yeah. So in order to have a solid color image, you have to have two wefts, and that makes a different end result, basically. And this I incorporated the color in a different way. So yeah, and this is actually a different weave structure.
Is anyone around? If I pop in the next couple of days, are you pretty busy? Or I just want to see what's going on, and I just did a little peruse of all the studios before we started out here. But
I'll be here. I'll be either in the shop or else you can.
I believe most people will be around, maybe a few days or
I
two.
don't have any stuff in here at all, but yeah.
Craig, maybe you can text me or you could send me a text me.
The highway, and she got arrested as an elder, and she was sick, and she was telling the police that she was sick, and then they didn't listen to her because she's just an Indian in jail, and she's an agitator, and then she died in jail. And you know what I mean? So that there's something very
She was protecting Inglewood's.
yes, yeah,
so
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, thank you.
She died outside of prison.
As a result.
Acquired pneumonia, and she was in
Yeah.
prison. And my understanding is we can talk about it now, but it was a long time. I'm supposed to say her name.
Yeah.
But there was successive actions with respect to sort of honoring that, including the theft of the flag, the Olympic flag. So that was, where was it? Down at the art gallery there. That's really more about it, but that was several things that were.
Yeah.
And then just the labor of that blanket, and then that blanket itself. And so I enjoy so much because, those products, the dog coat, the gentrification, I just put, that's what I see immediately in Gastown, and the disruption of this national image and this iconry. But that blanket project is, it's patched together, and it's, it's rough, and there's all the borders that just get sewn over, and the kinds of stitch. Anyway, it's just so much to that, and
Yeah.
I really, just a greater appreciation for your and Jamie's work.
Thanks for saying that. And I think it is, for anyone who hasn't sewn on it shifts it to do that. It's certainly you know, experiencing that, the working with the hosts and participants, and Jamie and I working together and witnessing the book and the things that are said is, you know, really my PhD. Like, you know, that's my research. You know, it's just a huge learning, a huge piece of learning that's ongoing.
I wanted to ask a question. When I looked, one of the first impressions I got when I saw the lines is that they could be like an EEG or music. So I was wondering, this is just an idea, like, what do you think it would sound like?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and I think that one of the things that I want to do is do some collaborations with the Jacquard, and so, you know, I think that could bring in things like sound and other performative elements, and, you know, thinking around those kinds of questions. Yeah, well, like, what would the image sound like? Yeah. Like, it could be put on film.
So when the balloon thing is leaving, what kind of sound?
Do you want to hear that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Trick answer. It may take me a few minutes to find it. We were talking yesterday too. That reminds me of this one, which I actually conceived of horizontally, and this version of it might exist horizontally, but I feel like now it needs to be like 300 or 400 feet long, like really, really long, and that increasingly it like the single image, you know, has that sense of audio waves, and you know, other people have talked about that, and we were talking yesterday of how it's like a medical, you know, an EEG, but what it really looks like to me is the lie. The lie detector, when someone's lying, it goes like this, right? So I start to just really want to see that as this long piece, because the image is taken from my piece that reflects the apology. Do you want me to take a minute to try and find this?
Yeah. I want to hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's pretty great, actually. How do I get that? Might have to hear some other things as I find it.
I feel like a dancing bear. Jump on top of this.
Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, I know, it's got a date. That should help.
I also want to see like a performance with these.
There it is. Pass it around, actually.
That's cool.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You got help York up together and right on with you.
Put it up too. Yeah. And it's like I was weaving because I was obsessively wanting to get as much done as I could, because I had to report on my grant.
Yeah.
So I was weaving like 12 hours a day. And they were.
It's so gorgeous.
Isn't that fantastic? And I don't know why, I thought I took video, but I guess I didn't. But it's a very, you know, you become the machine. You sort of really have to be a part of this digital mechanical machine.
It also sounds like robots fighting.
Yeah, it sounds more mechanical when you're there. Like it's wood, right? It's what you're hearing is air, because there's a compressor, and me throwing the shuttle or making the shuttle go through this very simple mechanical wooden rope and wood, and the just lost the word of it. Beating there's a wood, board that you have to press the thread with. And to make like this is 5,800 threads across. So I'm doing that 5,800 times to make that. So you press the pedal, run the shuttle, or with that, it's double that because there's 2 shuttles. So it's like, yeah. I always think of that. I tree planted when I was really young, and it was all about, okay, if I do this many trees, I can buy a pack of cigarettes. If I do this many, like the currency was trees, right? To pay for my whatever. So it's, in now the space that you make is counted in like picks and
Question, just thinking again about looms, and I think
now it's annoying, right there.
maybe you kind of somehow tweak this thought is, they say that when some of our ancestors made moccasins, the old ladies would put a hole in the moccasin, because there was this notion that spirit needed to travel through. So, and it was also this notion that things couldn't be perfect.
Exactly.
And the Persians did it when they loomed. So have you, what's have you thought about that? Is that
I haven't thought specifically about that, but trust me, I've only learned like this. I learned how to do this. I've never woven before, so there's the imperfections are there. They're definitely there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, I think
As a concept.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
because I have thought of it. Because if you look closely at them, like how hard you beat determines how close the wool is, and this is very soft wool, so you can pack it, like I could pack it from probably 40 picks per inch, so 40 threads per inch to 70, which is a huge range, right? And it depends on how hard you push.
Right.
And I'm pretty consistent, but there are times when I wasn't consistent, and you can see that. And I think that's a really important part about the human part of this human digital mechanical hybrid, is that the body is really present in the inconsistencies. And that's something that I may use intentionally in later ones. So there's things, that I'm figuring out, and even I was saying to a couple people, like, now just hanging this, and I just put the light behind it at one point, where it was against the wall, so it was dark, on the inside, and light was shining through, and I realized that I think I could make an image in a color close to like by adding thread, like this, in a color close to say the white, and you wouldn't be able to see it from one side, but if you had a light shining, say on an interior, it would become visible on the interior. So things like that, like these kind of material things these are, I'm doing things that they're just shaking their heads at me, because it's like, you're not supposed to do this, right? Like it's just not done, And so you have to figure those things out, because people who work with it in a proper way.
I know it's kind of separate, but because you're thinking about looking at performative things, have you looked at the piece that Paul Couillard did many years ago, where he took long strips of cloth and took off thread off thread, and then moved it through like these vats or these bowls of spices, and then hung them, and he made a whole room.
Wow.
And it just took him weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was a way of kind of doing the opposite.
Yes, yeah.
It was very performative.
Yeah, I don't know that piece, but I do know, I appreciate that. That sounds incredible. But I know other ones using, yeah, it's beautiful. I wanted to, in the performative thing, to link in text and some kind of online interface, so that it could be.
I want to sleep under this blanket.
I know you said you wanted to roll on the
I want to
blankets.
roll around on them and sleep under them, like,
I want to hear more about that.
yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Maybe next week. Sleep.
There's also lots of relationships to like wearable technology, eh?
Yeah. Well, I actually started, see, you know, now you go back in time,